Hey revolutionaries, I'm back from San Francisco and ready to bring you this week's episode with Ali Ayash, who's a co-founder of the B Token, whose mission is to decentralize the sharing economy for short-term rentals. So if you're into the blockchain and the applications that are coming out on Ethereum, on the ERC20 token, and want to figure out what that is, this is the episode to listen to, because we really kind of cover the gamut in this one and, you know, get in depth in the weeds a little bit, get a little bit nerdy trying to figure out what all this stuff means. So listen to this one. But before we get to it, I just wanted to mention that, it was great being out in San Francisco for a couple days, and I went to this Blockchain Connect conference, learned a lot, heard the founder, Charlie Lee of Litecoin, speak, and other prominent folks in the cryptocurrency world. A lot of people from some of the famous exchanges that are there, like Kraken, for example, and one of the exchanges from Japan, where in Japan they accept Bitcoin in their whole economy. So it is a legal form of currency in Japan. Anyway, too much to discuss here, but I'll put some takeaways in the email update this month. So watch for that. I'll put some thoughts in there. Also, I wanted to give a shout out to my buddy Chris that I happen to see out there, who lives out there. He just moved out there a few years ago. He's a software guy and living in Silicon Valley. I think he's down closer to San Mateo or Pleasanton or something like that. But he came up into San Francisco and we hung out and had a few drinks, and we had a lot of fun catching up. And we probably could have had a few more rounds of drinks, but he had to get back and jump on the train back down to, I think it was Pleasanton, and told me he had an hour train ride out of San Francisco. We were in Fisherman's Wharf area. I was staying downtown because that's where the conference was. But anyways, Chris, great to see you. Hopefully you're listening to this episode and you figure out what I was doing in town, because I was in town to interview Ali and also go to the Blockchain Connect conference. So anyways, speaking of Ali, let's get to the episode. Again, this is a great episode. Ali and his company, B Token, they're on the bleeding edge of cryptocurrencies and applications on the blockchain, so check it out.
Welcome to Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, the show that explores reinvention in the digital age as it relates to career, creativity, and technology. Stay tuned for interviews with professionals, entrepreneurs, and creatives that have reimagined success and are making a pivot. If you'd like to listen to the entire back catalog, visit jimreinventionrevolution.com for instant access. And now, here's your host, Jim.
Hey everybody, it's Jim. Welcome to episode 21 of Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. And I'm sitting here today with Ali Ayash, who's one of the founders of the new B Token. And we're talking about the future of the decentralized sharing economy today. So Ali, welcome to the revolution.
Hey, thank you very much for having me today.
Oh, hey, well, thanks for taking the time to, out of your busy schedule to have a chat, because I understand that you're coming down to the wire here in terms of we were talking earlier about, like, it feels like you're cramming for a final exam because all these things are coming together at once, because this is a new project that you're working on. It's a new startup company. Tell me about the stage you're in right now and what's happening next week, because this is exciting.
Oh yeah. So basically, we're building building a B token, which is a new sharing economy, peer-to-peer marketplace where guests can book places on the blockchain. And what we're doing today is what we're preparing for, at least for next week, is the token sales, where we are actually generating the token that can be used on our platform for the sake of booking places for short-term rentals.
Okay, wow. So all of that sounds amazing, but I only understood about probably like 15% of what you just said, and this is great, because this is why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because there's so much happening with blockchain, with new tokens coming out, with things that are called ICOs or initial coin offerings. I don't know if this is one of those or not, but I want to have someone who's in the game, who understands all this stuff, explain it to the audience of what is all this stuff, because this is something that's really evolving fast and is going to have a major impact, I think, on kind of the world as we know it, in a way, for over across all industries, let alone the sharing economy that's really kind of taken off over the last 10 years, sort of the Ubers and the Lyfts and the Airbnbs, things that are out there. which we'll come back to that and talk a little bit more about the sharing economy. But tell me about the structure of, well, what blockchain is, what the B token is on top of the blockchain, and what it means when you're saying you're going to start generating this token. What is that? What does all that mean?
Yeah. A lot of people started hearing about the term blockchain in the past few months, but it's been around for a while. Actually, it came to the surface mostly when Bitcoin first emerged. That was around 2009 timeframe, where the creator of Bitcoin wanted to prove the concept of digital money, where you can transfer money over to someone else without having physical money in the place. And he used a data structure called a blockchain. And a blockchain is simply like a set of computers that are running to prove your transaction mathematically without the need of a centralized entity that verifies your transaction. So it uses the power of cryptography and mathematical hashes in order to verify transactions on a scale where no central entity has power over what's happening. And over the years, the technology proven itself. Bitcoin became so big, and other ideas started emerging, mainly like Ethereum, which took the concept of a blockchain, but instead of only working with physical transaction for payments, it added a whole new, imagine like an operating system on top of it, similar to like iOS, where now developers can actually develop apps on top of a blockchain and use the power of the blockchain to decentralize data.
So would you say Ethereum is the name of the quote kind of operating system?
Yeah. So Ethereum, in a sense, Ethereum is a blockchain, and it's a blockchain that is running a Ethereum virtual machine. And that virtual machine is basically like an operating system that allows any developer to create an application on top of it.
Right, which is separate from the Ether coin, which some people might know the Ether coin out there. Mm-hmm. Maybe they bought the coin as an investment or to kind of understand what cryptocurrencies are, et cetera. But that's just one application that uses Ethereum as the structure.
So
right?
Ethercoin is a special coin. So Ethereum is its own blockchain, and apps can be developed on top of it. But any app that is interacting with the Ethereum blockchain will use Ether as a mechanism to do some payments. So for instance, if you want to store something on the Ethereum blockchain, you pay some Ether as a gas. Have you heard the term gas? It's basically the Ethereum blockchain is powered by all these computers that are verifying the transactions as they're going, and the people who are doing this are rewarded with Ether. If you've heard the concept of mining Ethereum, that's basically those computers that are supporting the blockchain, that are making sure to validate all the transactions, will get some of that gas fees, so that their computers that is running on their electricity, they can actually pay for it, and plus more based on the Ether price that is happening.
Right, they need an incentive to be the mining to create the structure. Right?
Yeah. And that's basically the part of the new field called crypto economics, where it's all about aligning incentives of all the people to do good things. So if you do good things, you are rewarded with crypto. If you do something bad, you will not be rewarded. Or in the future of Ethereum, at least, is coming. It's called the proof of stake, where you can stake part of your coins, and you might actually lose them if you do not validate the transactions properly.
I see. Wow. Okay. Wow. Well, we've already really dug deep here so far, but this is awesome because it's really helping me understand it a lot better. And I know other people are probably for the first time are thinking like, oh, that's what all those terms mean. So structurally speaking, I know the B token is built on Ethereum or on Ether. How would I talk about that? So let's talk about what you guys are doing. Yeah.
So as you probably know, there are hundreds of coins today that do different things. Yeah. Most of them are based on the Ethereum blockchain. Mm-hmm. Ethereum blockchain related coins are mostly called ERC20 tokens, and the B token is just one of those coins that we plan to launch. So when people talk about ICOs or initial coin offering, it's basically the first time a token is generated and can be used on the platform to do a certain action. For instance, B token crowd sale that is happening next week is us creating a token and having anyone on anyone with internet connection can buy using their existing Ether. And after they buy it, they'll own the token and they can use it on our platform in order to book short-term rentals.
I see, but this is being built on these ERC20 tokens that are already out there. So it's really, in this case, it's not an ICO. It's you're generating the B token.
Yeah,
week, right?
Is
that the right way to describe it?
But in a sense, it is a coin, because the B token itself is a token or a coin or a currency that can be used specifically on our platform to do short-term rentals, just like other tokens exist to do other things, like whether it's a file coin to do storage or 0x to do some like exchanges.
Right.
But it in a sense, it's the coin is used to do certain utility, and this is the aspect of B token. B token is an ERC20 utility token that can be used in order to fulfill a service.
Right.
And it's basically the currency that is used on top of the app or the DApp, the decentralized application, which is what we're building with BToken and the BNest platform.
Right. Okay. Awesome. All right. So I got another question for you now. Now that we all know what blockchain is and kind of how the Ethereum is used to create different apps or coins, et cetera, what is the value of blockchain versus how we do things today? So this is sort of a new thing that came up, and one question in my mind was, is there a competitor to blockchain? So the way I think of it is like, there's like the internet popped up, and now there's plenty of different carriers that are competitors that you can go to access the internet, but the internet itself is kind of a concept or an idea, and but there's plenty of different pieces and parts to it that are owned by many different carriers. Is that the right way to think about blockchain as well? Like, there's not going to be a competitor to blockchain, is there? Or is there?
So that's a great set of questions, actually, right. Because blockchain itself is not a physical thing. It's a concept, and if you think of it, there are multiple blockchains. So not all blockchains are equal. For instance, Bitcoin is its own blockchain. Ethereum is its own blockchain. Tron is its own blockchain. Icon, all these blockchains that are available today are here to do certain things. Ethereum specific blockchains are powered by a concept of smart contracts, where those smart contracts allows you to build application on top of it.
Right.
There's a Chinese Ethereum. There is a Korean Ethereum, something similar to that, but it's a different blockchain. Right. And you can also build apps on top of them. It's just in the end, who's going to do it correctly, and who's going to have the most mining nodes, who's going to have the most useful application built on top of it. So in a sense, these blockchains are competing together, but at the same time, they're moving innovation in a faster way.
Yeah, the market is being made for this concept and technology, but there's still some kind of competitive things happening in terms of maybe which blockchain will win out, or which blockchain will be more popular or less popular or something.
Correct. That's what's happening. So, for instance, there's a lot of downsides of the current Ethereum blockchain. It doesn't allow you to do as many transactions per second as you want. And newer blockchains that have emerged recently that might be a lot faster than Ethereum, but they might have some downsides. For example, they have less nodes that are mining the blockchain in order to power it. So the blockchain itself is a new concept, but it can have they can be more than one, like, competitive blockchains.
Right. Okay, good. Well, thanks for clearing that up, because I was still confused about, what does it really mean? Because I'm not a software guy, I'm not a programmer, so my background's hardware engineering. We can talk about that kind of stuff, but software I get a little fuzzy. And I think everybody gets a little fuzzy because it's sort of made up stuff, and it's hard to know how real things are until you have a real experience of using something that's on the blockchain and figure out what the value is for yourself, like in your everyday day-to-day life. So thinking about that, let's maybe shift gears a little bit and talk about the decentralized sharing economy, what that means, and why that's a thing all of a sudden. Like, who cares about that? Is this necessary, or because I'm just getting used to the sharing economy? Okay, just the regular sharing economy that's centralized, that of Uber and Lyft and Airbnb, and I'm sure there's many other examples out there, and it's phenomenal actually what's happened. right? There's a company that just started, actually local guys out of Cleveland, where I'm out of, called RV Share. So they're doing the Airbnb for RVs,
Nice.
so for campers and all these kinds of things, and it's a great solution because you're leveraging, like especially when you buy a camper, you might use it 3 or 4 times a year. If you're a busy person, you have a day job and whatever, and you're using it as a vacation kind of vehicle. But there's all this, unused time and space in it all the time. So, when the sharing economy comes together, now you can leverage that resource and have other people use it. Mm-hmm. So it's really cool. It's a great idea. But what's the decentralized part now? And why is it necessary? What's the value in having this decentralized approach to it now?
Yeah. So the current model is a centralized entity will own your data. It will own handling the security of your platform and everything else. And everything has to go through that centralized entity. And for example, Airbnb, for example, Uber, even Facebook. Yeah. So in a sense, in order to do whatever they want to do with your data, they decide that they can charge you whatever fees they want. They can show you as many ads as they want. So they control that specific thing. With decentralization, and you're in a sense removing that centralized entity or the middleman from all the transactions, because the blockchain is working on verifying those transactions, verifying their security in a trustless way, and I can dig deep into that later.
So I'm trying to understand, like, we have the ability now to have this decentralized approach. That's what Bitcoin has shown everybody. Essentially, it's kind of got this concept out there, and it's intriguing. And it's very interesting because now we can choose to structure things differently. And I think for the financial system, just in general, in terms of like international money transfers and talking to someone directly, if you're making just an exchange, you don't have to go through this central process anymore, which is good and bad, I think. Okay, so and it comes back to like what you're saying is trust. I want to kind of explore this trust idea a little bit more. So, today we trust our banks and we trust these guys, and yes, they charge us fees, but they're providing us a service, and that's any company that you buy anything from. That's what business is all about. When you buy your Nike shoes, you're trusting that Nike, built you a nice pair of shoes, and that's why you like them and you trust them, and that's why you're going there, because there's a certain level of quality you're going to get. And yes, it's a centralized place you got to go. But they reap the benefits because they took the risk and put it together. So, in the decentralized world now, as it seems like it's evolving very quickly, what's the how do people get paid, or what's the value that you're bringing now that it's decentralized? Other than you might be able to eliminate a middleman, you might be able to eliminate some fees. Maybe it's a lower cost approach. What are the other values or pros and cons, I guess, of doing transactions this way?
Yeah. So again, like I mentioned, security is one of them, but sometimes there's a benefit of having a centralized entity that controls a lot of things, and we might not actually feel it that much in the U.S. because people have, in a sense, trust in the banks, trust in those centralized entities that they are going to protect your data. But in a lot of countries, like overseas or in third world countries, people do not actually trust those entities and would rather use another way of doing things. A lot of people don't use banks in third world countries, but they might be interested in the trusted nature of the blockchain, given that it makes sure that your money is safe because it's protected not by people, it's actually protected by mathematical formulas. And I mentioned the word trustless, decentralized trustless platform. For instance, the blockchain, you still want to send money from one person to another, but you don't trust the other entity. But the way it works is you even though you don't trust one person, and even though you can't trust 5 individuals individually, but they're collective, you can trust the collective decision that the 5 people you don't trust are doing. And in a sense, that's what's called trustless security, that you get the benefit of a blockchain. And then back to the decentralization. Now that we have this trustless security, you don't have to have a central entity controlling it, and then in a sense you can allow people who are running the network to move forward towards the better of the network. You probably heard of the word fork, where people vote, people who are mostly have stake in the network through either owning a part of it, developing it, or having some tokens like Bitcoin or Ether tokens.
I see.
They will come into a consensus and decide that, okay, let's move on and do this other thing, and that's what happens when a fork happens. And then they continue with the same blockchain, but now you end up having two blockchains, the old code where people are not supporting it anymore, and then the new code where the majority is decided that this is the right way to go in the future. And in a sense, it's giving the power back to the people who are incentivized to make sure that they do the right thing for the network and for themselves and for everyone.
I see. So, I mean, it kind of reminds me of sort of like a co-op situation. Like there's a lot of, I think organic grocery stores or something that I can't remember years ago that it was like early on, even before Whole Foods kind of came to fruition, that, a community would get together and in a co-op structure for a business, and they wanted, better food to eat, for example. And it kind of reminds me of, it was decentralized because the community was building it essentially. There wasn't just one business owner that was putting that store together. But this seems like it's gonna fill that need when you, like you said, like in these third world countries where, hey, the government's not as trustworthy as people would like it, or their currency's not as trustworthy as their economy needs it to be, or something, for example, in terms of just exchanging value. So I can see where, okay, I understand now a little bit better about how the decentralized nature of things, what that benefit could be and what it could provide. So, I mean, I think, because, when I first heard about this stuff, I mean, it sounds good in theory, but you're thinking like, well, someone's got to organize this stuff, no matter what. It all comes back to who's going to organize it.
That's true. That's
right?
true. And I'm not saying that centralization is bad. Centralization is always good. Like, for instance, you can get a lot extra benefits for like the Nike example that you gave, or building the good shoe. You know that those experts are able to do it. But the main benefit of decentralization is, again, one, security, two, aligning incentives, making sure that people are incentivized to do the right thing, and that is the key to ensure that this new network that is decentralized will always be fully functioning in the future. Because if there's a conflict, people will disagree and then decide to go one way or another based on consensus on the blockchain. So security, aligning incentives, and lower costs. Now that it's fully decentralized, you don't have a central entity determining how much it needs to take for every transaction that happen between two people. Now it's fully decentralized, fully. You have individuals all over the network determining the outcome. So they are being incentivized with this gas money that they're taking, but at the same time, you don't have to like reduce 10% out of the commission between two entities, and this gas is like minimal. It's a few cents. So say that again. This would be, so now that you're in this decentralized model where you're not charging 3% or 4% of per transaction, it's going to be lower, but you still have to charge something in order. You have to have that incentive there still, right, for the miners that's going to create the network where the transactions will take place and to actually do the transactions, right? But it's just going to be a lower cost essentially. How does that get determined? Yes.
By the community?
So the network, the Ethereum network, for instance, and that's the main example I'm using when we talk about gas, is basically the gas price is dependent on the network, on how much it's being used, and how big it gets. But Ethereum has its own roadmap, and it's going, in a sense, the gas prices might go up or go down, but in the end, the plan for it is to always go down. As the Ethereum network grows and as it becomes more mature and the new protocols being built on top of it.
So theoretically, the cost should continue to go down.
Yeah, and
the
just
more it's used.
To give you a quick example, like the gas prices for sending money from one address to another is just like literally a few cents. So it's not something very big. So if let's say the transaction cost for you on the B token, if you want to stay at someone's places, you will send them the money in a sense indirectly, but you will pay a few cents rather than paying $10 or $20 for a night.
I see. Yeah, interesting. Cool. So, wow. Okay, so now I realize why they call this gas. So like gas money. Essentially, it is sort of this, fuel that you need to run the network. Essentially, and that's kind of why this term got coined. When I first read about it, I was like, gas. What are they talking about? So okay, I'm sorry. I'm a little slow, I guess, sometimes, everybody. But okay, so I understand that better now. This is great. I'm really digging this, Ali. So cool. All right. So now that we got this sort of understanding of decentralized versus centralized and some of the benefits, et cetera, tell me more about the B token or the concept of the B token itself in terms of, you're taking on these short-term stays, short-term rentals. How did you get into this type of idea? I mean, there's plenty of concepts or markets or niches out there that this type of technology and thinking can be applied to. But why short-term rentals?
Yeah. So in two main there are two main platforms ready to use blockchain from day one, and those are payments, where one entity is paying another entity, and then sharing economy applications, where one entity is paying another entity for a good or a service. So you can think of it like, if I want to sell something online, there's a buyer and then there's a seller. So P2P, that's a sharing economy. Okay. You have one peer on one side who's requesting something, and then there's one peer on the other side who's sending the something. And in the old ways of doing things, the one person will pay the other person, and then there's a central entity that verifies the payment, make sure that the user is actually shipped their product, and make sure that the other user actually received the product. Right. Same thing with Airbnb. A guest, one peer in the peer-to-peer marketplace, books a place from a host, the other peer-to-peer in the P2P market, and then the hosts will get paid through the guest, but by the guest, but through the central entity, whether it's Airbnb or whichever home sharing platform there is. Right. So what we're doing with B token is taking that concept, but putting it, but decentralizing it in a sense, and it shouldn't be an unfamiliar concept, because the sharing economy kind of works with decentralization in the same way. Sure. Because now you have two entities, but you have multiple entities on the blockchain who are verifying those things for you. So it's also sharing. If you think of it, those users who are running the blockchain are doing that when they're not using their computers, they're running the blockchain on it. Mm-hmm. So in their free time, where a good example, like you mentioned, was the RV rental. Right. They're doing the same, but instead of giving the RV to person, they're using their computer to run the blockchain. Yeah. For
leveraging that resource that's unused at the time.
Yeah. And so at B token, we're doing a decentralized Airbnb. We're building it on top of blockchain, and we are building a way to solve the problems that Airbnb solves in a centralized way, but decentralizing it. And those main three problems that we're talking about is payments. So now we don't have to go through a payment entity. We created a payment protocol that users, guests and hosts can easily send money between each other and get the things, all things verified without the need of Airbnb to verify those transactions. And then there is the concept of reputation, where if you are we want to keep track of your previous reviews and previous interaction on the platform. And if you're a good actor, you can use the platform. And if you have a bad reputation or you're a bad actor, you are not allowed to do as much. All the way down, if your reputation scores goes too low, you won't be able to use the platform anymore. Right. And then the third problem is arbitration. So if there's a conflict between a host and guests, right now you can call Airbnb and Airbnb will help you out. But we're also building, as part of B token and the BNest platform, is a arbitration system that is also fully decentralized on the blockchain, meaning that instead of having one customer service entity that tells you that you can call and then they can help you out, we have people who are on the Ethereum blockchain in the B token network who can actually solve the problems, and they are incentivized with B tokens to actually solve issues between users. And I can talk more about the arbitration layer that B token is doing later on, but it also follows the same property of the crypto economics that I just mentioned before with Ethereum. And if you put in some B tokens, you are supposed to use those B tokens to the better of the network. So you are incentivized to do good decisions when solving conflicts between two users. Okay. So if you stake a few B tokens in our arbitration layer, you can take that same amount if you solve the case or voted who's right and who's wrong, and if you did the right choice, your reputation goes up. You gain a few extra B tokens, and if you didn't, then you might actually end up losing some of your tokens if you didn't show up for your arbitration. Oh, I see. And in a sense, it's ensuring that you have this double-edged sword. Like if you pay, you are rewarded. If you don't show up, you lose some of your tokens.
That's interesting. So I have that brings up a couple questions for me in terms of this arbitration. First one is this something that sets the B token apart? Like, are other people doing this arbitration aspect? Because, when you get into this decentralized model, right, you have conflict. Someone has to resolve the conflicts. Yeah. And either that points back to some central entity solving them, or this arbitration process. So is this something that naturally most decentralized applications will have, or are you guys kind of leading in this respect?
Yeah.
Creating this kind of framework to do the arbitration.
Yeah. So we realized that those are shared problems between any sharing economy application. So again, and in order to do anything in a sharing economy, whether buy or sell, whether order food, whether get a car, right, or stay at someone's house, you need to be able to pay. You need to be able to not allow people who have bad history to join. Right. And at the same time, you need to be able to resolve conflicts. So what we're doing at part of B token, in addition to the short-term rentals, is to build those three protocols: payment, arbitration, and reputation, and let any sharing economy application use it. So in a sense, if you think when you say Ethereum protocol, it's basically the infrastructure of the Ethereum network. Ethereum, as it is just a computer. It has the power to do things, but it's up to the programs that we're developing to make it do more complex applications.
Right.
And even our protocols are using other protocols to do certain things in the background. So the more protocols there are, the more complicated application you can build. So in addition to building the app layer, which is the decentralized application layer, we're also building a protocol layer that is used to improve the network, can be used by any sharing economy application, and is used by our specific application.
Wow, okay. Cool. So that's kind of maybe what's the right way to describe that? Sort of an added benefit of the B protocols or the B token concept is that you needed to create it for yourself, right? Yes. First of all, right? But now you have this nice solution that other people can leverage, or the other sharing type of applications could leverage as well.
Yeah, that's
wow.
Right.
Okay, interesting. Cool. Wow, I'm learning a lot today. It's really good to be able to sit here and pick your brain on all this. So, thinking about that, like, you're a very high level dude. You're a co-founder of this new company. How did you find yourself here? Like, what's your background in terms of, like, how do you get into this stuff? Where did you come from? We talked earlier that you were most recently at Google, but tell everybody kind of your background experience of how do you get into this kind of stuff?
Yeah. So all through my my actual career, I've been working at centralized companies. And I'm a software engineer. When I first graduated, I worked at Amazon for a while. Amazon is also one of the big cloud companies today with AWS. And everybody heard about AWS.
Okay.
And then
so you should tell people what that means.
AWS, Amazon Web Services.
Right.
And I would say, like, most of the internet is built on AWS these days.
Right.
And
so many large companies, like, I just happen to invest in Dunkin' Donuts. This is why I know this. But Dunkin' Donuts moved all of their web service requirements to AWS. So all their websites, all their media, all their I guess, data storage, et cetera,
Yeah.
all their email systems probably, et cetera, is moved to Amazon's structure.
Correct. And AWS is just basically one type of public cloud. In my previous career I was working at Google Cloud, which is another cloud provider. Google and AWS are kind of in competition. But what is a cloud? Basically, it's just a centralized set of computers.
Right.
So to me, when I first heard of blockchain earlier this year, I was like, oh, this is a familiar concept because it's the cloud, but it's everybody's cloud. It's not Amazon's cloud or Google's cloud.
Mm-hmm.
And
say that again, because I think it's a great way to kind of just imprint it in people's minds. Say it one more time.
Yeah. So the blockchain is in a sense it's a cloud. So if it's a cloud that is controlled by the people rather than controlled by centralized entities like whether it's AWS or GCP or Microsoft. But and I started looking into blockchain earlier last year, like in the beginning of 2017. Ethereum was super interesting at that point, and at that point there was like not many projects going on. Like there was probably like less than 10% of what.
Okay, so this is in the beginning of 2017, really like January, February, like a year ago?
Yeah, a year ago. I think at that time the Ether price was around $10. Now it's above thousands. Yeah. So it just shows how quickly the market capitalization of blockchain is moving on. Mm-hmm. But I was more interested in the actual data structure behind it. As a software engineer, and then I learned it. It was pretty straightforward. It's very familiar. It's very similar to the data structures behind GitHub, which is one platform that most of software engineers have used. And afterwards, I was interested in smart contracts, and I wrote my first smart contract, and I was like, oh wow, I can actually send money to this thing. So now it's merging economics and computer science together. And that's when it was like super interesting. And at that point in time, John, our CEO and co-founder, approached me and came up with the idea. And then he mentioned Airbnb on the blockchain is going to be huge. And the idea is not like pretty genuine, like in a sense, because everybody was thinking that that's like the first applications that are going to happen. But the timing was perfect because at this point in time, Ethereum blockchain has proven itself that it's a pretty good blockchain, pretty successful. That was back in the August timeframe when like we decided to put everything together, and we were like, yeah, like, we can do it. We can also, in addition to doing it, let's just do the protocols, and because like at this point, most of the users were not. Everybody, even like investors, were talking about. That it's not the time for applications. It's the time for building the infrastructure of the blockchain.
Right.
So no one was very interested in investing in just an application. Mm-hmm. It's a lot different now. Like everyone can actually build applications.
Right.
You probably heard of like one of the main applications, the CryptoKitties, that came up recently, and it's basically a simple application. But now you can actually do these kind of things.
Now there's it seems like there's thousands of applications starting to happen.
Yeah.
Before there was, tens, 50s, hundreds. Now all of a sudden, I feel like there's this explode. In 2018, there's going to be this explosion of applications.
So if 2017 was the year of protocols and the infrastructure of the blockchain, 2018 is going to be the year of the actual applications. Right. And BToken was in this in that zone. So we're merging two very very new concepts. I mean, the sharing economy concept is also new, given that Airbnb and Uber just like recently exploded the way they did. And at the same time, this blockchain technology and decentralization is super exploding right now. So it's like merging those two and getting something useful out of them, and not decentralizing for the sake of decentralizing, but actually doing stuff better than the centralized model that everybody is familiar with today.
Right.
And that was like a very exciting that I actually decided to immediately quit my job and then just pursue this full time and build it. And right now we have a really, really cool product that we actually haven't shared with anyone yet. We're launching it next week, after, like in the next couple of weeks after our token sale. And we're hoping that
you don't want to announce it right now, like an exclusive here on on Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast? No?
So we're
You can't do that.
I will say like small leak, but we'll be leaking like an actual.
Maybe I can talk to your lawyer while I'm here. No, I'm just kidding.
The actual how to use the product in the coming week. So, but there's definite utility that is coming up with this project, and we got amazing. We have an amazing Telegram community today that everybody keeps on pinging us, telling us, "Hey, I want to be a host. I want to be a host. I want to be a guest."
Oh, interesting.
Mainly,
Okay.
hosts are very interested.
So they're
in
really
this.
reaching out to you already, just with the. I mean,
Worldwide.
you guys already have somewhat of a buzz, because I know there's this group around Cleveland, the Cleveland Crypto Collective, and they already knew your name when you guys had reached out to me, and I was just like, okay, I was trying to figure out, are these guys legit, or are these guys a bunch of jokers out here, and but yeah, it's people. I think this is, like you said, it's no mistake that the initial centralized applications of the sharing economy was something like Airbnb, right? So this makes sense that one of the premier decentralized applications would be something like the B token for short-term rentals, right?
And the benefit is huge for lots of hosts. Like me personally, I've been talking to hosts for the last month, and everybody tells me I want to use your platform because of the low fees. So
Interesting.
if you are like occasionally hosting an Airbnb, that's different. But some people do it as their entire job. And
Sure.
if you are hosting for $100 a night, one place, even though like property managers will probably have hundreds of places at the same time, they're losing $10 to $15 if they're using Airbnb or other platforms that are taking commission.
Right.
They're making, if they use B token, they're actually keeping that amount of money in their pockets. And over a year, that's like thousands of dollars of missed opportunity that these hosts will be actually benefiting from. And we're helping them out by doing B token. That's why like hosts, we got more interest in hosts than we got in guests. But I mean, guests will like immediately follow. Everybody who's using crypto today want to try
they'll
use it
try.
for utility.
They'll want to get a taste and figure out if it makes sense for them, if it's right for them. Really, because I think the host side sees, like you're describing, the immediate benefit of, hey, lower costs, maybe it'll be easy for me to use because I use it so much, right? The flip side is the guest, that these other parts of the protocol, like the arbitration and the trust and all that, that's more for them on the guest side, I think, right? And so that'll probably just naturally come later in terms of just when you get this thing rolled out, the guest will kind of figure out what the value is for them eventually. Yeah. The hosts see it immediately because they're like, hey, this is going to make a big dent on my bottom line.
Correct.
Right?
But there's also the concept of people who do not want to use their fiat currency or like for their US dollars.
Right.
They are fully invested in cryptocurrency, and they want an outlet to spend their crypto.
Right.
Now you can see a lot of restaurants today that they actually take crypto. You can buy things with crypto online, but you cannot stay at any place today online with just crypto.
I see.
So
Okay.
we're trying to give that incentive, and we realize that the crypto community is amazing, and we have like crypto conferences all over the world pretty much every day.
Right.
And we kind of collected all this data, and we realized that anybody who actually wants to travel into those meetups owns crypto or is interested in owning crypto, is trying to start a crypto company, is trying to learn more about crypto.
Right.
So, but regardless who you are, you want to stay someplace, whether it's an Airbnb or a hotel.
Sure.
And you'll end up having to use your dollars.
Yeah, you're in this
whichever
world
currency.
now. I mean, this makes a lot of sense actually, and people kind of listening out there, people that are thinking about their own applications or their own business, don't miss what Ali just said here. So there's just a big market component to this essentially. That's like, hey, if transactions are moving this way, and people are using this, and it's just maybe even if it's a cultural phenomenon, people just want to do this. It makes sense to serve them up the application where they can, play in this world that they want to play in as well. Aside from the actual benefits and the structure and the protocol. So I mean, that's, don't lose that part of it either, and that's what makes a good business in the end. That you're focusing on what the customers are looking for out there.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
Yeah, cool, awesome. So, all right. I just before we kind of get off your background or how you get into it, I just want to ask you, like, you have incredible experience at these major companies, great high paying jobs. You're probably stock options vested or whatever. but you still chose to do this on your own. Is this your first kind of startup that you've done on your own as a founder? And why did you think, I could see the attraction in terms of just the technology and how the world is changing. You want to be in the mix of it, but what's it take to decide, I'm going to be the founder guy and I'm just quitting and going to go do this?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not like the third or fourth employee, right? So tell me what that experience has been like, and maybe if you want to, tell the folks who your partners are, et cetera, in this as well. We should probably honor them and recognize them.
Oh yeah, definitely. But basically, most of the people I'm working with today are coming from similar background, like myself. But I've been moving around, and I've been to so many crypto conferences, just talking to people who are building it. There's a lot of hype. Everybody's trying to do it to get rich fast. Yeah. But a lot of people are just marketing their products. They are just and they're less interested in the actual technology and benefiting the network. Mm-hmm. And they're just doing it as a it's called a cash grab, where like they just do the ICO, take the money, and then do nothing with it, nothing useful. We're trying to like bring the so this is a new field. We wanted to be like trailblazers in it. We wanted to be the different set of people who are working on this. So we built a team of Silicon Valley superstars, and we decided to do everything in the same best practices that we learned in our previous jobs. So John, the CEO, and my other co-founder Tony, they're both from Uber, and they both worked at Uber for some time, and we're also working with other folks from Facebook and other engineers from Google as well, and Amazon, and we have a team of nine people right now who are just working all the time, trying to not only build like the great product for the people, not only to do the crowd sale, it's more of also to define the best practices of how to create a new utility token, how to create a new decentralized application. Right. Our smart contracts are also like kind of different in a sense, like we're building them in-house. We have two great smart contract engineers, myself included, and we're working on those we're taking a different approach than most of other ICOs have done, and at the same time we're open sourcing most of what we're doing. Like, I mean, smart contracts are already open source, but we're also open sourcing the way we are communicating with those smart contracts to set like a nice path forward for new applications to be built. This was my goal. My goal was not only to just start working on just yet another application that we'll be over with, but actually building the infrastructure of blockchain and building those protocols, building best practices around how to develop a good protocol and how to interact with a good protocol from your decentralized application. So whether it's design, whether it's engineering, architecture, whether it's even product and how our customers are going to use it, all those are just completely new fields, and anybody can just be as creative as possible. We just started seeing a lot of overlapping patterns. So a lot of new decentralized applications are following similar patterns, and similar to ours as well. And there's no right or wrong at this point. We're just like trying to see what works. But fortunately, we have our previous experiences to guide us through what are the best practices to do certain things. And our goal here is to, in addition to building the platform, in addition to building the protocols, is to give as much information as possible for anyone to be able to do it. And our ultimate goal is to be able to give you the same experience as existing applications without you having to know anything about blockchain. Right. So one of our end goals is that you come to our website, pay with your credit card, stay at the person's place exactly like you do it in whether you're doing it in a hotel or you're doing it on Airbnb, and you have no idea that you actually using the blockchain in the back end, so that it's more and more mainstream, and hopefully we can get that like a couple of years down the line, and in my opinion, like that's what most applications are supposed to do. In the end, like in the end, like let's say 5 years from now, everybody will be using whatever they're using, whether it's their banks, whether it's their applications, but all those will have a blockchain aspect to it, which allows you to have less fees, even no fees, and I'll give you all the security and trust.
Yeah, well, it's incredible. It really, it sort of parallels, makes me remember like really the early days of the internet, where people were so focused on, bulletin boards or web browsers, and they would we would talk about the nuances of all these little structural things that now we really don't talk about that stuff. You're just talking about the applications and what it's good for and why you use it. And I think that makes sense, and I like that customer-centric point of view of like it's all about the experience, and if you can make the experience to the individuals, individual customers, seamless, then and you get all the benefits of the technology part. I mean, it's a win-win-win, in the end for all this stuff, and it's got to be fun just to be knowing that you're at the forefront of it. So I could, like I said, I could see why you could dive into it, but it's still there's still a risk there of just quitting and hoping this thing's going to work out. Essentially, not hoping, but I know you're going to make it work out. But
it's good to have an adventure.
Yeah, for sure. Life's short, so you got to explore and experiment, and that's kind of what you were describing. And I think that speaks to me because I like the creative part. That's why I always like science and engineering, and that's why I ended up in advanced development myself, because it's creative part is imagining how the world can be different, imagining what new applications or what new things the technology you enable will allow. I mean, it's really kind of interesting. So cool. You know what? We got a few minutes left, but before we get out of here, there's a couple questions I like to ask folks when they come on the show, and one of them is, since this world is getting more and more digital and technology oriented as we go along, is there anything that you who are a software engineer, who you're at the the bleeding edge of blockchain technology and creating new technologies, is there anything that you struggle with? What do you struggle with in terms of technology, or something that really like frustrates you, or maybe weirds you out about how things are changing? Or
Yeah. One major difference I've found actually when I started working on this is, again, there's no right or wrong part of things. So previously, there's pretty much prior art for everything I've done in my past, and that's the case for many people because the patterns have already been established, what works and what doesn't work. In this space, like right now, we have to try and see what works and what sticks in the end, and we're hoping that we're always going to do the right thing, but that's not always going to be the case. So I'm pretty sure at some point we will realize that we are not doing the right thing, and we should just like throw everything we've done and then try something else and see if that works.
Right.
So in a sense that's kind of scary, but at the same time exciting that you're actually innovating in this completely new greenfield technology field. There's also the sense of, okay, what if something will never scale for us? That means, I guess like for more technical folks, like if Ethereum will not allow you to do more transactions than you want, and it's just like there's slow but at the same time fast progress happening that can just completely change your thoughts on things. So for instance, what we're doing right now is we're seeing the limitations as they are today, and then we're also seeing the limitations how they are going to be in the next 6 months, and trying to build a product that fits both limitations and make sure that it scales properly as we grow the number of users, and at the same time as the Ethereum network or as the blockchain becomes faster and doing transactions. So hopefully, like we're looking forward towards changes in a positive way, but we're also building our stuff to work today as well.
Right. Wow, that's I wouldn't have thought about that. So yeah, a little bit of, I guess, fear of the unknown of this greenfield space of, you don't know if you're designing yourself really into a corner, because you could be like 3 years from now and realize, oh my gosh, the technology evolved in a way you couldn't have foreseen, and you really got to make the next pivot, I guess. That's very interesting. So speaking of that, that's my next question is, how do you continue to reinvent yourself and continue to have the courage to continue to pivot when you need to? Maybe if you have like one tip or two. It sounds like you kind of are in this process and kind of trained yourself to think this way on a daily basis because you're creating this new technology. But, for people out there that are thinking like, you know what, I barely use Facebook and I don't know anything about all these new applications, they're struggling with how they kind of, need maybe to keep reinventing themselves. like a few years from now, like maybe we only have an option to use something like the B token in terms of like staying in a hotel, and you got to figure out how to deal with that technology, or you can't stay, it's just going to be on our smartphones. So how do you continue to reinvent yourself?
Yeah, I guess mostly reading right now is, so again, as I mentioned, there's no like one pattern of how things are happening. Everybody is doing things in a way and seeing what works and what doesn't work. But there's a big resource that came up of all this, I guess, ICO boom that was happening in the last few months. We have hundreds of white papers written today that are trying to explain how to do certain things in a decentralized way, and this is like an amazing resource for me. Like I have to read a few white papers every week to make sure to see what others are doing, and kind of learn from what's going on. And every month that passes, these white papers are getting better and better in the sense that they're using what others have actually tried and seen have worked in order to do something better in the future. So there's like a big resource, and the other thing is I mentioned that the crypto community is amazing. Like it's growing.
Yeah, it is.
Like
it really is.
I try to go to as many conferences as I can, mostly to learn new things and see what others are doing, but also to like talk to people and get to know more and more, and like increase my network. And I realized I started seeing the same faces. I started recognizing them. They start recognizing me, and
sure.
It's. I feel like that's the best resource. And one thing I'm doing right now is I like explaining about blockchain. I like going to meetups. I've actually hosted one meetup last December.
Oh, really?
It was
cool.
I was one of the speakers. I was actually speaking next to other speakers from Coinbase.
Oh, nice.
And one of my goals for like these coming months is to spread the word about blockchain. Try to teach anyone who isn't familiar with blockchain about blockchain, and at the same time helping people understand that this is a technology. This is a new technology. A lot of people go into blockchain just like for a quick investment and get rich quick.
Right.
But what my point is to go over the technology and explaining why it's interesting, how it's trusted, how it's secure, and why it's not like an actual bubble like the .com bubble. It's kind of different in that sense.
Yeah, there's some few aspects, I guess, maybe on the investment side, or how people initially became aware of it or got to know it, which is true. And there's always going to be that little bubble or kind of quick hit in terms of making some quick cash. But yes, this is a larger thing that's happening. And the technology is fascinating, interesting, and like you said, I think 2018 we're going to start seeing a lot more applications, and we're going to understand the value a lot better. So those are great tips. I'm glad you mentioned the white paper and going to conferences, and that's one of the reasons why I'm out in San Francisco today. So I'm going to the Blockchain Connect conference tomorrow. I don't know if any of you folks are going to that.
Oh, yeah. There.
Okay, so maybe I'll see you tomorrow, and we can continue talking. But I like the white paper aspect. And so speaking of that, before we get on here, if people want to read the B token white paper, how can they get a hold of it? How can they get in touch with you? You want to give out your handles or what? People want to learn more about the business and what's going on.
Yeah. All the information is on the website. It's btoken.com. B as in the bee fly.
Okay.
B.
The bumblebee, like bzzz.
Yeah. BEE token.com.
Okay.
And the white paper is btoken.com/whitepaper.
Okay.
You can also get it from the site. But I guess our main source of like getting knowledge of how to help us, how to grow the network, and like the source of news of us, it mostly comes from our Telegram channel, which is also linked on the website.
Okay, you can find it there.
Our Telegram community is pretty nice, like in the sense that they're helping each other out. And then ask some really interesting questions, and what we're hoping to do is like we're hoping to most of our early supporters are going to be our early users as well. So we're basically bootstrapping our network by our users. So if you're like a guest or a host, you can have a VIP wait list for you soon, and all the details of that is on our Telegram channel.
Okay, so that's the best spot. Just go to the website, check it all out, read the white paper, get on the Telegram channel, and educate yourself. So this is great, man. Thanks so much for doing the show, and I'm sure I'll see you around tomorrow, I guess.
Yeah.
All right.
Definitely.
Cool,
Thank
man.
you very much.
Thanks. It's great. Thank you for listening to Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. If you want to hear more, join our mailing list at jimjimsreinventionrevolution.com. See you next time, and remember, the revolution has just begun. So dig in, embrace the process of reinvention, and start realizing the success you've always dreamed of.